as Mr. Hunt is. How close are you, sir? Good afternoon. Say that again. You
Tired.
broke up. You're coming what?
Not today.
All right, so you're a couple minutes away. All right.
Actually, I think it's not much.
All right, we'll see you in a few.
Last week.
Bye.
Five-story walk-up tower yesterday.
Real good.
That wore me out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's the
Yeah,
plan on South Boulevard.
All three of them.
The smelly plants.
Yeah, I smelled like
All three of them showed up, actually.
I used to live near there, like in the 70s.
Okay.
Over in the neighborhood across the street.
Across South Boulevard there.
Yeah, back from, like, I think off like Murray Hill down through that area. It was bad. The smell was bad.
Yeah, I asked him why. They still selling grease pretty well with all the health people, and they said, well, we took the trans fats out of it.
They do vegetable oil, don't
They make they make Crisco, man. They make hydrogenated vegetable oil. They make the bad stuff. But they took the trans fats out. Trust me, there's hydrogen lines all over the place, right? That's the dangerous part of it.
John is coming down 16, so.
they? Rail cars coming in there with it.
Yeah.
Use a lot of them.
Midwest, say something like as he walks in.
Well, they
"Hey,
corn
I can't
oil
motion
and
to
make it into Crisco. That's what they do there.
Is that all they make?
Yeah.
Make hydrogenated oil. man.
Better be
Make
careful
Crisco
here,
and,
yeah.
You know, there's 1,000 different things they make. Ham, whatever else.
They've been there since what, 50s, since the 60s.
Yeah,
at
they've
least.
been there a long time. Trust me, that's why they're hiring me. They got a rack of some of their, they want me to certify a whole bunch of beams. They're listing loads on them.
I know they were there in the 60s. That's when I was
Well,
short.
they've added to it. I mean, I saw it wrong, but I don't go over there.
No, we're fine. I'll just remind everybody that we are actually streaming at the moment while we're waiting for John. So if your mic's on, you might want to turn it off. Just John is somewhere on 16. was going like this. Huh? And it dawned on me that, are we streaming? Oh, well. Okay. I can imagine. Well, we'll go ahead and call to order the town board work session for August 9th, 2016. You're at a little bit after 3:30. We have a full agenda today. It looks a lot, got a lot of action items to go through, and I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented with the 7 items.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, John will be here momentarily. The first item up, later on, excuse me, this evening, technically, legally speaking, the board has to formally approve the seal. I know a couple of variations of the seal was presented to each of us at the informational meetings. This seal that is presented there is the one that was settled on at the staff level, and as you can see, so really it's a discussion of thoughts, questions, consensus on the seal. Any reaction?
I like it.
Like it?
It's nice.
Looks good? Okay. All right, so tonight it'll be on the consent agenda to approve it, so just wanted to make sure everybody got a chance to see it. Welcome, John. Next item up is the comprehensive plan finalization. We're pulling this puppy across the finish line. It's been a long process. In the spring, several of us at the board level provided some comments, and they've been redistributed in this book or in the packet for today, and we just need to bring closure to those. And as I understand it, the timeline will be Studio Cascade will come to us at the end of this month, the first part of next, I believe, and Lisa will clarify that a little bit later, but with the policy bridge work and the land use. And so those are 2 items that we know are left outstanding. And so it's up to us to kind of justify the things we want changed at this point in time, or not, and we'll finalize this document as far as we can take it today, excluding the land use and excluding the bridge policy work. So I'm happy to start with my comments. Number one, I'm comfortable with the direction that we're going with the policy bridge work. I know Studio Cascade's doing a lot of work, and I think that will help address several of my questions that I presented, so I purposely am not going to comment on the policy side of it at this point. We'll let that sort out there for me. So I don't have any additional comments on policy. Vision, we all had the opportunity to respond to Studio Cascade's request. We had a 2-week window, I think, after we presented these comments, and so all of that should be in, and we'll see that in the final document as well. So my comments, going through my comments, I'm comfortable that the vision stuff was heard. And again, we'll get to Brenda and Fred in terms of your comments as well, so we can reach consensus. What I didn't see in here, and I'd like to just throw it open, there's a lot of items in here. How are we going to monitor progress? And I think that's something that we should declare. I don't know if Studio Cascade can give us some guidance. Do we want to create a scorecard out of the financial scorecard that we have? But in general, good towns, good cities, when they have a document like this with a lot of statements, track their progress, and somebody's reporting back to the board to see if we're making progress. So make sense to have staff come back with the recommended approach on that? Want to track the progress? Keep it alive?
Trying to remember, I think at one point, when we were at the committee level, when they were producing all the different goals, chapter by chapter, that was talked about, and sort of figured that, yeah, we would keep track of it that way, just like a scorecard. Okay.
I didn't see anything in the document, so,
Lisa may be able to, you want
Lisa, can you address that?
In the policy action, there is going to be an item that says that, you track everything. How we do that is the question, the how. I'm sure there's different ways, and I'll ask Studio Cascade what they think and be able to report back to you.
Thank you. Land use they're coming back on. And transportation, Dennis has to create the transportation plan, and then that will get incorporated into a formal update of the plan, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
All the legislation and different things that happen, the transportation plan will all warrant an update.
Good. Brenda, I know you had some comments.
I did, just one. In the historic preservation section, I would like to have I think it's on page 2.76, and 2.77, and have the the proposed local historic district map removed and the comparison, and just have the National Historic District, which is in place at this time. There's no local historic district.
Okay, thoughts?
After a good deal of thought, I think that Brenda is correct, and especially in light of trying to develop a new downtown plan, I think that should be our focus, is what we think of as downtown, what we think of as Main Street. And then if at some point in the future, when we have addressed historic preservation again, if the topic comes back up, we'll take it up. But I don't see a point in having it here now.
Okay. Everybody okay with that?
One more comment on page 2.73. Also, the historic district guidelines, I think I have a question there. Is that the meaning of that statement, although not fully implemented, is that talking about the local historic district, or is that?
If I had to guess, I would say, yeah, that's probably.
Okay,
what
and
they
I'd
talk
like
about
that wording removed as well. That's all I have. Thanks.
I'm sorry, which? This. Okay with that? Okay. Fred, you had comments?
Most all of the comments that I had that were sort of soft comments have pretty much been addressed from what I hear and what I've read. The main comment, question I still have is I want to see the land use plan with the road network on it at some point, because I think it's critical to have the road network shown so that there is at least some certainty as to where development can proceed as of today. We don't want to have the same situation arise that we did on Waxhaw Marvin Road, where we had projects coming up for annexation and rezoning, and we had no idea where Waxhaw Parkway's right-of-way was going to go.
So that'll come in two flavors. We'll get the land use, and then timing for a transportation plan is that a year out, do you think?
transportation master plan?
Yeah, where all the roads are laid out and all that. I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want to wait a year to have an idea when we've already seen drawings that Dennis has prepared that give you a rough idea as to where Waxhaw Parkway's gonna go and so forth.
There's a difference between the approved regional plan versus our complete transportation master. That's why I'm asking the question.
We've got a layout for the Waxhaw Parkway right now, and it's gonna be on our future land use map. That's gonna be part of the bridge document. As far as a town-wide plan, I'm not sure when that falls.
Okay, that's a ways away. But let me ask the question differently. Will the regional transportation, official regional transportation plan be represented at least on our land use map?
It's not gonna be on our future land use map, but we do intend to have that on our new zoning map.
Okay.
So when will we see that? When will Warren have use of that map to talk to developers who might be wanting to do something on the east side, Waxhaw Parkway east side, Waxhaw Parkway west side, Waxhaw Parkway perhaps even south of Main Street? It's a tool for you.
So, just so I'm clear, so there's only a handful of roads proposed, new roads proposed in Waxhaw. So the idea is to have those on a map along with the land use designation, so we'll know
Right.
where the road's going and what it seems like that could be done through GIS as simply as anything.
Right.
I mean, just to
Yeah.
produce that.
We'll have it soon on the future land use map.
Okay. Any other input points? It's in your hands now. Go ahead.
Can I have her go through the next steps?
Yeah.
Where the next, okay, just walk through the process to get to the finish.
Okay, if we have consensus on these items, what'll happen is now it still needs to go to the planning board for recommendation, and it'll come back to you for adoption. So, probably it'll go to next month's planning board meeting, and then the first meeting of the month, in October. So,
Okay.
Studio Cascade is coming back.
yeah, and they're coming for the bridge work, so that's the vision, the policy action, and the future land use map. So, they were supposed to get me, all the kind of fine-tuned documents today. And so, they have until 5, so hopefully those will come in today and they'll be,
Aren't they on the West Coast?
yeah.
So they,
Well,
a lot of time left.
3 hours.
so hopefully I'll have them in the morning.
So when will they physically be back in Waxhaw to work with the board on?
Yeah, once I look over and make sure that it's all fine-tuned and ready to go, then we'll set up the meeting, and I imagine it will be in 3 or 4 weeks.
One more thing. As we're doing another task, which is working with the planning board, here's a brand-new document. Is there any chance of getting that to the planning board before Studio Cascade gets here? And maybe while they're here, have them spend some time educating the planning board on it, so that it goes through the planning board a little more smoothly.
Yeah, I don't see how that would be a problem. Usually they'll fly in one day and then stay an entire day, fly out the next day, so they'll have an entire block of the day.
Okay.
Okay. Meets with approval from the back. Okay, next item up, it's not Main Street Board of Directors, it's the Main Street Advisory Board, but similar concept. So, and I'll walk through this. At the informational meetings, we talked about some of the changes that we are making, or as a town are making to Main Street, and I kind of want to walk you through, after sitting down with Kurt, pulling Sherry Adams' input and others' input off the gallbladder surgery table, et cetera. Some of the genesis behind the rules of procedure, and what's behind some of the work that's coming later on in the agenda. We changed this to Advisory Board. Advisory Board, we did not want to leave the impression that this was a not-for-profit 501c3 or anything like that. We're not there yet. At some point in time in the future, we may, but we need to take the steps as we talked about at the informational meetings. Okay. Just a little bit of background as to Some history on this. 2009, the Small Town Main Street program became alive. I think one of the interesting things is in 2012, the town created the Downtown Waxhaw Vision Plan. Its intent was to create a framework for development investment. There were somewhere in the neighborhood of 32 projects requiring funding. They had another 10 to 12 zero fund projects, if you want to call it that, that touched a myriad of things. The creation of a tax district or approach, a town property civic real estate property approach, which is what we're going to tackle later on this afternoon, interestingly enough. There was multiple private funding strategies, and there were a number of systems, as Warren calls them, projects: transportation, form-based code, parking, pedestrian, et cetera. When you look at that, when you step back and look at that, there were no clear goals established. It was intended as a framework, and as a result, when you look at the funding for that, and given where we were on our budgeting processes, there were somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 to $40 million in projects that were out there. 17 million just in the first four. And of course, we didn't have a funding strategy for that, and so they've kind of lagged on the shelf, so to speak. It's hard to say what the outcomes were. It's not a criticism, it's just a matter of fact. We haven't made as much progress maybe as what the vision really was hoping for. When you look at some of the work that Kurt's done, we have now identified a number of projects. Some would argue that we probably need to step back and ask the question, how do they all fit together? Are they individual projects part of a strategy? How do they drive economic vitality, et cetera? You go from the TAP grant, the mill project, there's talk of a pedestrian mall, parking and parking management. We've been focused individually on the parking. Commissioner Fitzgerald's brought up parking management and things like that. We have events, we have farmers market, we have the park, we have, and interestingly enough, the park was not the park that was identified in the vision plan. It was a different piece of property, and so in essence, we have a couple of parks. The library was mentioned. Library is now a bond project or a bond referendum for the county. So there's lots of things going on. And anybody who was down here Friday night certainly got to experience the CSX phenomena and some things that maybe we need to look at engaging our state legislature and beyond on that. All that to say, if we're going to look at Main Street, the discussion has been an advisory board. What's the purpose of the advisory board? And just to be clear, these words on the chart are taken straight from the rules of procedure, which you all should have. And I'm going to highlight, there's a lot of administrative stuff in the rules of procedure, but this basically highlights that this is an economic vitality group. It is to stimulate economic vitality in downtown Waxhaw. It's a step up. It's from a task orientation. It is really driving at what are we going to do downtown over the next 5 years, 7 years to really drive economic vitality. And you can go through the list of bullets, but that's taken straight from their rules of procedure. This chart represents the skills. As Kurt went back and sat down with Sherry Adams and some other people that have been associated with Main Street, you begin to see the fields of experience, the influence, and the financial resource development that these people really need to bring to bear if we're going to have a successful Main Street program that's focused on economic vitality. The real question primary question to the board, though, it doesn't matter if we put a group in place if we aren't crystal clear on what we expect them to do. And it hit me real hard that while Kurt's done the good work in terms of getting the rules of procedure, we as a board over the next month, as we're bringing people on board, and how we do that is on the next chart, we really have to bring forward and get resolution during the month of August some critical questions, the goals for downtown. First and foremost, Commissioner Stewart brought up the fact that the downtown boundary needs to be focused in on the commercial economic development, the commercial vitality, or so does retail and commercial vitality, not just mirroring the National Historic District. Let's narrow the focus to what we're trying to accomplish here, which is economic vitality. Yes, sir.
We also need to add the Horton property into the downtown because it's supposed to be a downtown park. So how is it a downtown park if it's not inside of downtown borders?
Right. So and that's one of the first tasks is for that group is going to be bring back a revised boundary so we can look at that as this is what we want. As importantly, though, when you look at the projects, I'm not saying these are the right goals. I just started to categorize them in my mind for us to begin to have a conversation. What are the big goals for downtown? Do we want it to be a safe, clean, and attractive place to live, work, shop, and visit? Well, that gets into, we got a bunch of projects as listed. Do we want it to be a walk to everything urban center? Because that gets into parking management, trails. At one point in time in one of the plans, that they had the thread trail wrapped into it and said it was mysteriously free of charge. I like that one. I like that approach. As to I don't know how they were able to do that. We've talked, and you see it in the seal, the arts, culture, dining, and entertainment. That gets into marketing, branding, arts district, farmers market, and what we want to do there, and targeted recruitment. And then the architecture that we have, the walkability and programming, is that what we're going, plus the retail, is that the cornerstone of the enhanced visitor experience? I'm throwing these out there. I'm not saying they're not the big goals, but somehow, some way over the next few weeks, we as a town board have to reach agreement on what they are, or this advisory board we're putting in place probably won't have as great a chance to succeed. And I put that out there. For us as a board, I think we need to establish the recruitment approach that we want to use. How involved does the board want to be? Do we want to use the approach that we've used in the past? Do we want Kurt to bring forward candidates based upon the skill list? We have to establish and validate the big goals and then monitor the big goals. This gets to one of the changes that the Main Street group suggested to our rules of procedure. Haven't made that change yet, but the recommendation for Main Street was, rather than put a board member on the advisory board, a town board member, have that chair provide quarterly updates to the Waxhaw Town Board, the chair of the Main Street Committee. In other words, have the entire board actively participating on these big goals on a regular basis. They said that will keep it alive, that will make it aggressive. If they're doing their job, that's going to drive some significant financial requests. And a chair like that should be coming to the Waxhaw, to the town board, to highlight where the progress they're making and then the requests that they need to make to the full board. The other change that you'll notice in the rules of procedure, and this was made by Chaplin, we have the original appointments came in two flavors, 2 years and 3 years, and Chaplin said that's an unworkable situation because you're rotating 5 people off at one point in time as you roll. The question or the dilemma that Main Street had is it takes a while to get up to speed, and so you don't want somebody for just 1 year and then roll them off. So what Chaplin suggested is a 4-year term, a 3-year term, and a 2-year term. The 4-year is a 1 and a 3, basically. That's their 2 terms, and that's how he suggested to get around it. But beyond that, what you see is what you get. So I'll pause. I think we still have some work to do in terms of the big goals. But tonight, question is, do we want to put on the agenda the rules of procedure? And are we comfortable with the rules of procedure and the recommendation from Main Street? And we talked about it at our informational meetings, but I think it was important enough to have a full discussion as well. We reached consensus by and large, but are we comfortable with the changes? You see the red lines in front of you that Chaplin made. The only one left to address is the ex officio, and you see that we have the chair in here already reporting to the board. So I'll throw it open to discussion.
I had just one question, and that is on the advised, the rules and procedure, Article 2F, and that was utilizing the town of Waxhaw's downtown properties as an asset to downtown development.
Is this thing going on and off the microphone? Okay.
Just, what does that mean exactly? Are we going to turn property over to them? We're going to dedicate property to? How does that work?
I think later on today, Warren's and staff are presenting the real estate question.
Yeah.
And they're going to ask a general question, where does this property that's downtown fit, if at all, and come back with a recommendation on it. So,
Okay.
no, we're not turning over. Yes, we're having a look-see at it to see if it makes
Right.
sense.
Okay, yeah, I've sort of suggested a number of times. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
So they're going to look at the boundaries?
Correct, that's the
Those
first
are
thing
going
they
to
do.
be, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, on the first page, B, under Article 2, how will you be encouraging historically appropriate renovation and construction? Keyword encourage.
Yes, and the keyword, thank you for the question, the keyword is encourage. It's, right now, it's one way we encourage historically appropriate, how is it worded? Renovation and construction is through the facade grant program. So it's an opportunity that owners can use if they so choose, and if they do want to be eligible for the funds, then there's certain criteria that they have to comply with, but it is by no means a requirement that anyone make use of that program. So that's one example of how we might encourage historically accurate development.
Okay, could you add facade program in there, in that statement? Encourage through the facade program?
Well, I wouldn't want to say that it's going to be limited to just that, because
Okay.
there could be other things that come up in the future as other opportunities to encourage historically appropriate renovation.
So as an example of that, one of the things Roy Sansbury has mentioned to me in the past is some of the gold leaf printing on the Kakanos is, he views that as historically appropriate.
And for example, when we just repainted the facade of the Niven Price building, the color scheme we used, we actually talked to North Carolina Main Street before we did that to see what would be appropriate for the time period. So there's a variety of ways to do it, but the way it's worded right now is so that it is not a mandate. It is tools that can encourage or incentivize that kind of development.
Yes, sir, Mayor Pro Tem Hunt.
Not a budget. I don't see that listed anywhere in here.
The existing Main Street committees have a budget, so that'll be combined into one.
Okay. No increase, or that'll just be determined?
It'll be as is.
And then I think to the mayor's point, at some point, if the advisory board is working how they should, then there's going to be needs identified, and then requests could be made in the future.
Let's be real candid. It wouldn't surprise me in 3 months they come back and say, here's the 5-year plan and here's the multi-million-dollar cost it's going to take. I mean, and do we have an appetite for it? If you're going to talk about, we already got a $500,000 in the streetscape, the matching on the TAP grant. If you're going to do the streetlights, you got money there. If you're going to start to create more walkability or parking management approaches because they want to shut this down or use that property, it's all going to start to cost some dollars. I just use as the basis the original master plan, and there were some significant dollars highlighted there that we're going to have some tough decisions to make over a multi-year period instead of just looking at it as what are we doing tomorrow kind of thing. That will get to more of a budget that you're thinking of. Not a budget for them to spend on, but a budget for capital improvements and stuff.
From an operational perspective, out of the gate, there won't be anything.
Correct.
But as far as programming capital projects, that's a different.
Right. Other questions, thoughts? Consensus? Is this not working, Nick? Are we comfortable with the changes?
Let me get it straight in my mind. As far as the reporting back every 3 months with a full report on what's being done, rather than any board member at all going to the meetings. Of course, it's an open meeting,
Anybody
but
can go.
having to go.
But not as a member of the board.
Okay.
Yeah,
I got you.
like every meeting, they're open. We okay?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Which leads to town-owned property.
In the board's strategic priorities in the current year, there are a number of references to various town-owned properties. And in the context of talking about the Main Street Advisory Committee, we put this item on the agenda for 2 reasons. So number one, if you look at tab B4, you've got Melody put this together. Her eyes are better than everybody else's eyes. So, but to give you a better visual, if you flip to the next page, you've got a map. Okay, and on that map, we've broken it down in town-owned property or in the maroon, and there's 2 categories here. There's a category, I'd say, if you drew a line across town from the police department where we're sitting north, that's a different sort of set of properties. Most of that relates to, except for this building, relates to recreational properties. Then you've got a clustering of properties downtown, and that's where there's a greater variety of types of different properties. And I'll get inquiries. It's not infrequent. What's the town's plans for the gravel lot, the Niven Price building, the old town hall, and to a large degree, there are no plans per se, and that's where I would recommend that, and it's stated in the Main Street Advisory Board's rules or procedures here, to utilize that group in determining the best way to use our downtown properties. So, and just full clarity here, my recommendation, even though the Main Street boundaries may be pretty tight in terms of the commercial area, there are a number of properties in the downtown area that may fall out of that boundary that I think it would be appropriate for them to consider in developing plans for, how we're going to best utilize those properties as an asset for the downtown and to stimulate economic vitality and all that. So just to cut to the chase, I would recommend tasking the downtown or the Main Street Advisory Committee with looking at town-owned properties, and potentially they could make recommendations on properties the town should pursue purchasing potentially, in addition to the ones we already own. What's the proper disposition of these properties that the town owns downtown? The Niven Price building, should we keep it? Should we continue to, should we repurpose it for other types of uses than are what's occurring in there today? Should we sell it for commercial use? What's the appropriate use of all our properties? downtown in stimulating as the general purpose, their general purpose is to stimulate economic vitality in the downtown area. So as opposed to today walking through each individual property in the downtown area, again, tasking the Main Street Advisory Board with looking at our properties and identifying their best use in the context of all the other items that they need to look at in the downtown area from the perspective of, you know, the TAP grant, the parking agreement, the millennial study. How does all of that play together in a downtown area? You can't just look at downtown properties by itself. All this is going to relate back to a broader vision with a variety of different items that group's going to look at. So if you move back tab by tab or page by page, you get a parcel description of when the property was purchased, the tax value, and all that. But that's the recommendation related to how we would handle identifying how we should utilize property in the downtown area is through the Main Street Advisory Board.
So they're going to come at it with a primary focus on economic vitality. You know, how does the corner gravel lot, what could we use it for, or should we dispose of it to yield this kind of economic development result? Is what you're getting
That's
at.
the essence.
Yeah. Okay.
And in addition to that, you know, so they get outside their boundaries somewhat in looking at that. Natalie's going to do a presentation on the downtown park. Since I've been here, that's been referred to as an events park, spur economic activity in the downtown area. I haven't heard it referred to as a neighborhood park. So it would be appropriate for them to look at that. Is that going to bear the fruit that we want? I think we need to have that conversation before we think about spending $4 million and have that group look at that in the context of everything else.
What does everybody think?
Yes. I agree with town manager.
And just, I think one that's kind of left off of here is what I've heard referred to as the downtown green, which is that stretch along the railroad. I guess my assumption is that's in the railroad right away, although we maintain it and use it but it's just, there's so.
You took that off?
Yeah, we may not technically own that, but that is part of the property that we maintain in the downtown area, but it must technically be in the railroad right away.
It is.
Okay.
Except for one little square that used to be some building or something.
Yeah, you can see that square on the map. A rectangle.
Well, I'd like to express an opinion about parks, and some of you know how passionate I am about parks, and I can understand what you're saying, Manager Wood, about, the downtown park, and I agree with Commissioner Warner about looking at spending that much money and determining what we want to use it for. But when I'm looking at all of the park plans that we have, and the ones that we're using are mainly for sports, there's no, and I know the other park on Waxhaw Marvin is coming, more of a leisurely park, but I think people that I talk to and that I'm generally see and call me and talk to me is, we don't see anything. Their thing is, we don't see anything, because they don't care about the roads, they just care about the traffic. They don't see underneath, and they don't care. It's just, we can't see anything that has been produced for all the taxes that we're paying. They want to see something. And in the line of a park, a place that families can go. And I just think we need to keep that in mind when we're looking at the downtown park and how we determine what can we do as a board and as a town to give back to the community something that they can use, because right now, it's kind of sparse. I know it's coming, but I think they need to see something.
Other?
Yes, I have to agree wholeheartedly, and just point out that we have two big things we have to do now are establish the goals that we're talking about for the Main Street directors and pick the right people.
But you're in agreement with,
What Brenda's saying, I mean, parks is one of the items on the list of goals, and they need to be put together, and they need to have a group, this board of directors looking at it, nothing else on their plate, just to take care of these type of things.
come back quickly.
Come back quickly.
Yeah, I think that's kind of, let's do something.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, we're gonna do it, we're gonna do
Look
it.
at it.
And I understand all of the logistics, but we need to do something.
Well, and the
that
idea,
area.
yeah, and the idea is with the group we select, it should be some pretty talented group of individuals. They can come back with kind of a prioritized list, so we do some things instead of building a plan for a plan kind of thing. We have several of those. We need to move forward. Paul, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, all we talked about so far is in the downtown area. We own many properties that are not in the downtown area also. We need to consider those properties too. Maybe we should do that at a different time, but I understand, yes, Main Street should take over the downtown properties and give us advice of what we should do with them. Dispose of some of them maybe, turn them over to retail. I don't think that the town should be a landlord. I think that's not the purpose of a town. But that's my own personal opinion. And I think that, sorry, that's sparse. There's many properties in the town. There's some properties that we should just, they're so small that we should just give them to the property owners adjacent to them. And why should we carry the liability insurance? Because it's ridiculous just having them. And we need to have these and do it, and not, we need probably have probably a day work session and just work it, really work the properties that are outside the boundaries of downtown, and to understand every piece of property we own, and they should be assets, not liabilities. Some of the properties are just liabilities because you can't even build on them. They're swamps, they're in cliffs, they're junk that the builder didn't want, so we'll just give it to the town. And we need to just give it to, then we can charge taxes on it at least.
So, this is getting a little bit.
I'm sorry.
No, it's coming and going. So Warren, there's a second request there to kind of say, okay, look at,
My recommendation is to very methodically, let's take the downtown first.
Right.
And, okay, there's some other properties we need to look at, but let's stay focused on the downtown area and have the Main Street Advisory Board go through the process of evaluating those first. And truthfully, if you look at this map outside the downtown, there's not a whole lot of property where there's throwaway property that we own.
Not in the downtown area.
Well,
There's a
I
few.
don't think in general there are a few.
One in Hillcrest.
Okay, there are a few individual parcels, but I would recommend, let's stay focused initially out of the gate on the ones downtown, and then we'll get those unwound, and then, okay, we'll start looking at the other set. That'd be my recommendation. And related to the downtown park, the board had two, I think my recollection is, they had two objectives. One was to direct the Park and Rec Advisory Committee to continue to work to bring the price down, and Natalie's going to report on that today. They have. And secondarily, what are some minor improvements that could be made to the Horton property to get it open and utilized to some degree? So those were the two immediate objectives for the current year related to the downtown park.
So in essence, what's happening here is downtown, we're building a town center plan. I mean, chartering this illustrious group to kind of pull it all together, but we need a town center.
Can they also update that list that has all the properties listed and what the values are? I know
think it's
that's
in here, isn't it?
tax values, because they're not really on tax thing,
You have to have them appraised.
but they're not close. They're not even close to what I would think. We spent $100 and some thousand on the water tank, and it's appraised for $34,000. It's gotta be at least worth 100 and something, whatever we had it fixed. You understand what I'm saying?
The thing about market value, I mean, the market value, if you try to sell it, nobody pay you for it. I mean, that's what it's worth. I mean, that's what the appraisal
The
is.
scrap value on that water tank is probably worth $100,000.
Yeah, but it'll take you $100,000 to get an erector to take it down too, so.
You understand what I'm saying? But you shouldn't appraise it at 34. It's worth more than that.
That's a market value, I mean, you're
So,
not paying taxes on it anyway.
I would just think the market value on that property would be worth more than that because it's in such a central location in the town, even with the water tank on it. Yeah, really.
so based upon a recommendation that comes back from this advisory board, we can assess what to appraise, so we can, based upon what they're suggesting we do, and then update our records accordingly. Unless the board has an appetite to go get an appraisal for every one of our pieces of property, which is gonna cost us some money along the way too. So I don't think we're there yet, so. So in this discussion, then, you're gonna immediately move into the town hall discussion and kind of influence this, right?
Well,
Okay.
yeah, I've got a recommendation on one specific property in the downtown area. So would y'all like to move to that? So we're good as far as assigning this task to the Main Street Advisory Board, okay. In your goals, your strategic priorities for the current year is to have a discussion about long-term solution for town hall. And in reflection with everything that the town has on its plate, that is not a item that I would recommend tackling right now. If you look at just what Indian Trail, I know they've done a lot of work in their town hall. That's an $8 million endeavor that they're undertaking. We have enough needs. We're not in the position to build a new town hall right now. That's my, as an interim step or mid-range stopgap solution, I would recommend to the board that we renegotiate the lease that we currently have in the facility that we're in, and spend some money renovating what I would call the old portions of the old town hall complex for future staff expansion, and just keep moving and focus on areas that are important to the citizenry, which I'm not sure the town hall would fall into that category right now. So I'm just going to be blunt that I think we need to take that off the table in terms of a discussion on a long-term solution for town hall, and save that for a point where we've checked some things off the list in terms of some other projects we're working on.
So you're suggesting, and we've discussed a little bit at the informational meetings, extend the lease, that's already cooked into the operating budget now. Extend it, that'll last us 5 years, 7 years. In addition to that, do a budget amendment of some kind once you come back with pricing to update the old town hall and the old planning department for use by whatever staff you deem to go over there. And so that would be the financial impact of that, which is in the couple hundred to 300,000 range versus a remodel of a building versus the buying of land and building of a building.
Correct.
Is everybody okay with that? Okay with that?
We also need to plan on, what we're gonna do with that. We're using it for a storage facility now, so we need to know where we're gonna store those items. That has to be worked in the budget.
Right.
And then with that, are you going to then wait on Niven's price in terms of renewing leases based upon the recommendation? Because I get that question a lot.
I would, that's another one I would turn over to the Main Street Advisory Board.
Right.
What's the proper, do we need to continue to, just to, in full disclosure, I've directed Kurt not to lease additional space until we were clear on what the long-term disposition of that building was, because it gets more complicated to unwind things if you have it fully. So now we're reaching a point where after we establish the Main Street Advisory Board, we could turn that task over to them, and they can make a recommendation on how to move forward with that.
Okay.
Has there been any studies done on how many offices you can get out of the old town hall and the building behind it in the renovation? And I guess you already know how many offices are in the Main Street property.
Yeah, so so in the current facility, town hall facility, we have 27 staff people assigned to that, I believe that number's right, assigned to the current town hall, and it's fully occupied. There are no more, we have people in the copier room, so we're maximizing the use of that space. For folks that have been around a while, we toured Natalie and Todd and I toured the old town hall the other day, and it was not, in its day, it was not laid out in an efficient manner. Yeah, so I don't think I'm being generous, and it does look like a bomb went off on the inside. I mean, there's all kinds of storage stuff in there as well. I don't know. We did an office count on the back, taking the front building out and looking at the back properties. That can house how many folks on the back side? Okay, 6 to 8 in the old house.
The house?
Yeah, in the back. But on the front side, it would just depend on how we laid it out. But I think it'd accommodate quite a few folks in there if it was done properly. But we haven't laid that out. But in the most inhabitable space right out of the gate is the building, the house in the back. You couldn't put anybody in the old town hall the way it is right now.
Or the garage.
Or the garage.
And the Main Street property has how many offices?
I'm sorry, the Main Street.
Niven's price? Yeah,
Niven's Price. It's 90. It's 9,500 square feet, and we did some analysis on utilizing that building as a town hall, and you could accommodate just over 50 people if it was an open layout combined with offices. So that space with an elevator and that space could be utilized. Well, we looked at it as a possibility, and I think the price tag on that for renovating, including an elevator on the inside, was $1.25 million. But you're well into $2 million by the time you resurface the parking lot out back and you get all the furnishings in, and the exterior renovations weren't a part of it. But that's the outside of the recommendation I just made. That's your second most affordable option in terms of a town hall. But then when the town reaches a point where you have 50 employees in that building, then you're maxed out, then you would need to look at surrounding properties for additional space or satellite space. So that was something we actually looked at.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Looking forward 7 years when there's more staff and you start running out of space in the other two places. Okay, thanks.
And I think that would carry us for a while. I mean, I would envision over time, as Natalie's operation grows, she would more than likely have her operation in another site, so that frees up some space. So that the Niven Price option, if the town decided to pursue that, could probably carry the town for quite a while. But it does not include a board chambers. That would be something that would have to be done either here or somewhere else. there would not be room for that.
You'd have to grow pretty substantially to double in size. I mean,
Chief, you like us here, don't you?
all we got is a head nod.
Notice that.
Okay. Other questions for Manager Wood? All right, next up, downtown park planning progress and David G. Barnes update. Natalie? Sorry.
Good afternoon. It's a good day to talk about the downtown park progress in the context of previous conversations. Today I'd like to give you a very brief historical recap of this project and then talk about some strategic considerations for this park in particular. Show you the recommended concept that was recently vetted through the Parks, Culture, and Recreation Advisory Board. Give you an update on David G. Barnes Park and its configuration as far as property is concerned, and then some of our next steps. Okay, a brief historical recap. Horton property was purchased in 2012, same year that our Parks and Rec Master Plan was adopted. The town contracted with Stewart for concept design in 2014, and the advisory board was directed by our town board to pursue that design. So as you can see on your slide, we conducted a few public meetings. We have presented a previous concept to the town board, and we have now come up with an updated plan and budget that falls within the parameters that are much more comfortable for the board to even consider. One thing of note that I wanted to mention is that the Economic Restructuring Committee through the Main Street program was consulted during the design process. And also, of course, this has taken some time because some other priorities have risen to the top, such as the YMCA project. In master plan development, I just wanted to give you a very quick recap on what has been done to date. A site analysis, and there's a laundry list of elements to that site analysis before you, schematic plan development, and so on. In light of our conversation and the many decisions that you have ahead of you, I did want to tackle this park from a strategic perspective, using Main Street recognized principles from the Main Street program. The Main Street program recognizes Downtown Development International as a key perspective in downtown revitalization. And so what I wanted to do was apply this to the downtown park and make a case for why it is very good for consideration in building, as it creates a synergy that some of our other parks may not. The downtown park is classified in our master plan as a community central park, and in being that is also a destination. If you were to look at the downtown today and truly assess what a destination is in the downtown, some people may say the brewery. Some people may say now the Dunkin' McDonald House, but by and large, we have very few destinations in and of the downtown in itself as a whole. Parks are recognized destinations and anchors. Also, they are opportunities for local and regional tourism, and they attract a lot of temporary taxpayers. So the downtown park makes the case for what is known as the 4 times rule. The 4 times rule is this, and this comes from Main Street. People will go somewhere if you can keep them occupied 4 times longer than it took them to travel there. So basically 4 hours of activity for 1 hour of drive time. This has also been an identified need according to the Economic Restructuring Committee, as well as the Millennial Task Force, who also garnered that, yes, we need more gathering spaces downtown to play into this 4 times rule. We need folks to spend some time downtown. A park takes you a long way. And though it's off the beaten path, it is connected. Okay, so as the park relates to downtown revitalization, again, DDI perspective through Main Street says your experience comes first, your location comes second. The community center that's proposed for the downtown park is a key opportunity. It is a multifunctional community center and really can be looked at as a revolving venue. You can put classes, you can have temporary art galleries, you can have expanded town events. Having covered event space opens up an entirely new realm of event opportunities that we are currently not able to get into. It can become rentable space for small conferences, craft shows, art shows, family reunions, and more. So essentially your community center as a revolving venue becomes a gathering space where you can have that sense of third place and give people a reason to come back time and time again. What we need to do in the downtown, of course, is to do that, give people a reason to come back time and time again. As mentioned, the community center is an opportunity, and the park itself, to be an event showcase. The event showcase is very important because it gives us an opportunity as a town to present a characteristic event experience, not location but experience, without the high merchant impact that we currently have. We close the streets down, we put our tents up. There is a very big impact to the merchants. Also, it does add event value to the south side of the tracks. It is difficult currently in event planning to pull the foot traffic over to the south side and allow those businesses to have the opportunity that comes with bringing 10,000 people to downtown in a given weekend. This downtown park in particular plays very well and can play very well into the town brand as a town brand showcase. So if we think about the town brand that we're getting to unveil here in early September, we have an opportunity through this park to make a visual statement to our residents as well as to our visitors as to what our values are and what we are investing in. And of course, we have an opportunity in very creative ways to create reasons for people to take selfies. I know that sounds funny to put that up there, but if we all think about how many selfies we take, if you have a couple key things in your park, you're going to get a lot of people coming around just to do that. Also, this park is key in preparing for the growth of our downtown residential population. We have the David G. Barnes Park, and that park is technically less than 1 acre. It's a very highly used park. People love it. It has its own Facebook page, believe it or not. However, if we put multifamily down there, we now have probably an issue. And so this park can possibly act as a relief valve for the density that we are projecting for the downtown area.
How?
How?
Yeah.
More space for them to get into and recreate. So some of our multifamily plans that we've seen come through do have some rec areas, but they're pretty small. So they're going to be venturing downtown to the downtown park. But if we have 1 acre, we're going to need a relief valve and more space, more green space to allow them to recreate. So the idea is if there's a path down to greater space, David G. Barnes is not going to get choked up, and it is pretty busy now. On a side note, we have ordered counters, and we'll be able to tell you systematically and with real numbers how busy David G. Barnes Park is in the future. Another aside is it's a great way to serve the east side. That would be your closest nice park to the east side residents. So of any park, and you can argue it for many of our parks, but of any park, this particular downtown park does have an opportunity to create synergy and to showcase our values, to take care of a lot of goals that Main Street may have as far as drawing people and keeping them here, as well as our Parks and Rec goals as stated in the master plan. So before you is the recommended concept that has been modified to get down to a price point of $4 million or less. So we've come to you at the deep discount price of $3.9 million, and you do get a set of Ginsu knives if you act now. So Really, the Parks, Culture, and Recreation Advisory Board did a very good job of vetting through the public comment and boiling down to what elements are needed for this park. Now, as mentioned by the manager earlier, there is an events focus in building out this park, and primarily because events are noted as one of our strengths. When we get awards as a town, many times you see something that's coming out of the events division and something that's coming out of the Parks and Rec department through the police department. So with that in mind, we wanted to build infrastructure into the park to support events so that we can lessen the impact on Main Street. So that is how we have designed this park in particular. The events features for this park include shelving and terracing for vendor setup and facilitation. The road that goes through the park is not only meant to put eyes on the back of the park, it's also meant to transform into an events midway that can actually be sectioned off and used as a pedestrian thoroughfare during town events. We have a vendor parking connection on the back end here, and please remember that South Providence School is back here, and that is additional parking opportunity during large-scale events. We do have multi-use green space up top, and also that can facilitate a number of things for an event setup. The community center, as I mentioned before, is one opportunity to bring indoor events to the downtown in a way that we have not been able to. Our art festival, for example, is something that we could greatly expand if we were able to offer artists an indoor space where they would not be concerned about their work getting messed up. Power and water infrastructure would be placed strategically throughout this park, and our parking lots could become transformable for additional vendor opportunities. One thing I wanted to mention too is our current TAP grant does show funding for the David G. Barnes Park, and that funding is earmarked for accessibility improvement. So what we did is we took a look in paring this down. David G. Barnes is much less touched than it was before, but in paring this down, we have an opportunity to create an accessibility route to our bathroom facilities. And we have currently $173,000 allocated within the TAP grant, and we would really need to use about $44,000 of that. That means we have $129,000 that can be repurposed within this plan, and within confines that Kurt will have to research further, but we can repurpose those dollars in some way. So essentially, I wanted to share that with you, that some of...
But very focused on walkability, mobility, accessibility, yeah.
Yes, and that works very well for our pedestrian and sidewalk here that could be picked up with those remaining dollars. I do want to point out that we have a recommended concept addendum. In paring the park down, we also took out some of the desires of the public. Should we have the opportunity through sponsorships and grants, we did want to have a concept drawing on how some of those elements could be placed if the town so chose to do so. And so before you is simply an addendum that should those opportunities arrive and the town believes that that is advantageous, then those elements could be added in. I will say, however, that as we've gone through this exercise, the value of unprogrammed green space has really taken center stage. You can do so much with unprogrammed green space. So I'm not quite sure we'd get to a day where we'd put this much activity or ask to do so back in the park. But if we did want to, we know how it could be configured. This is on your slide is a rough concept drawing, but I was able to obtain from the Stewart a much nicer rendering, so I'm going to pass that out to you. In the essence of trying to be proactive, we also wanted to vet out a potential phase one that fit within what the current 5-year CIP denotes. And I understand things are flexible within that. For a current phase one, we would have the opportunity to deliver a downtown park. We do have the events midway that's proposed for the park, but we also understand, to Commissioner Stewart's point earlier, that the citizens are going to want to see a park happen in the first phase. And to concentrate our money on the roadway in the first phase would leave very little to present a park. So with that being said, this proposed phase one allows us quite a bit of opportunity to allow folks to recreate and sets us up for further phases where we can identify some economies of scale to get the other elements into the park. So some of the features of that park allow us to give a pretty sizable amount of unprogrammed green space. That is extremely helpful in event planning, but it's also extremely helpful in recreation programming. We talk a lot about events. Well, recreation programming is essentially mini events. So the sky's the limit on the amount and the variety of events that can take place in this given green space. So where the community center will eventually go, the first phase will allow us to grade out the site so that not only accommodates vendors and events, but also accommodates things like soccer practices or recreation events and opportunities. Also, we understand the importance of a playground, and again, with the volume that we believe we have at David G. Barnes Park, a second playground below will be well served and well used. We also wanted to allow for parking. That parking in the first phase would be gravel to get that parking in. And of course, we have something that I have not brought up, and that is a stormwater pond. The stormwater pond is important to note because we do have that need within the property to capture stormwater. Without further exploration, we needed to put a placeholder on that stormwater pond. We do have opportunity to turn that stormwater need into an amenity. That amenity could be a stocked pond, it could be a pier. There are a number of things we can do. We can also see that stormwater pond actually decrease according to our consultants, and we could use some other methods such as rain gardens to do some stormwater capturing. But without further analysis, we have a stormwater pond there, and our Parks and Rec Advisory Board kind of likes it. The estimated cost for the first phase, if this were to be the direction that the town board wanted to go, is approximately $1 million, which matches up with the 5-year CIP recently adopted. So as far as the David G. Barnes Park,
People have questions? Just, Natalie, just,
Yeah, just to clarify, the initial one that we got the flyer from, and this is the abbreviated one, that included the building too? The
yes,
4.9
$3.9 million included the community center.
other questions?
The initial one, and then you have this new one was about $1 million. And you have a parking lot that's gravel, and then you have playground equipment in there. But the original one had a more expanded parking lot that would go up to the playground equipment. Would that inhibit the playground equipment to, when it goes to phase 2, to be used because you have to put another parking lot in?
When we went through the exercise, we believed it would not inhibit it, but that is something that we could look at further. We had to phase it out, so we wanted to bring parking in the first phase, and that seemed to be our best option.
So what assumptions did you make when looking at events? Corner lot goes away, a long-term partnership with somebody else? What assumptions are you using in this?
The assumption is that the downtown merchants are going to reach their limit with us closing off streets and putting up tents.
We don't close them off, CSX closes them off, let's just be clear.
Okay, yeah, right. Also, the gravel lot is questionable. Also, our ability to grow events is limited up there. We also have the opportunity to make our events a little bit more characteristic in this setting down here. But primarily, it's the opportunity to grow events and not have as much of an impact on the downtown merchants.
Yeah, specifically though, do you still need the corner lot? Do you need an expanded relationship as the museum builds out their amphitheater? I'm just trying to understand the give and take here.
This is in lieu of those things. However, of course, we would love to have those as well.
Other questions?
I have a question on, when you were talking about the TAP grant, the 73,000, is there a time limit to use that where you would lose it, or is that,
I
you would
believe
not
so.
lose it?
Is that,
5 years from probably
is that when we sign the contract? Okay, so 5 years from contract.
Okay.
So that looks pretty good for us, hopefully.
Basically, the $1 million project, you're going to do the initial grading so that you have a level, relatively level surface
Yes.
for events. Good, thank you.
We wanted to make it as usable as possible
Right.
first round.
It's a little tough when it's,
Yes.
Any other questions?
I'd like to make a statement. I mean, seeing as I live right next door to all this,
Yes, sir.
the amount of people that I see, even people that are not locals, using Given Street right now is really increased tremendously in the past 6 months. Since summer's come on, I see, if we had a sidewalk, we had more pedestrian friendly, because I see a lot of near hits. I mean, there's a lot of fast traffic, people trying to use it for a walking surface.
There are actually, that was something I was going to cover. That's one element that actually Commissioner Stewart brought up at our last Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting. Through the pedestrian plan in the future, we would make the recommendation for the addition of sidewalks. We've also consulted with the town engineer on opportunities to slow down traffic on Given Street, and there are some strategies that he was recommending that we could employ.
We got our speed hump and our stop sign, but they're not doing a whole lot.
No, there were a few more, actually. One of the things he said is the more friendly the environment looks, if you have planters down there, if you have benches, you have the sidewalking, and some landscaping, there's some scientific ways that we can also help with that speed. And if not, we'll seek
They
chief ice
respect
on
the
them.
street more if it's nice.
I wanted to also speak with you about David G. Barnes Park. I did speak with the board a while back on David G. Barnes Park and in looking at how to best work with that. It's an interesting parcel. Technically, there are two parcel owners of the David G. Barnes Park, the town of Waxhaw and CS&L North Carolina System LP, which is a subsidiary of Windstream. And so actually just last year, there was a transfer from Windstream to CS&L. So we're working with both right now in the process of transitioning informal permission for us to be there using it as a park to formal permission. And in doing our research, we worked with Chaplin, and we found that in 2008, the town did pursue a formal lease agreement with Windstream at the time, because the town was looking at a Part F grant at the time. And long story short, the agreement was not signed. So the informal agreement remained in place. The handshake that we could be there remained in place. So we don't want handshakes. So we are working for towards that formal agreement. And I did work with a regional vice president, and now I'm actually working with their legal team to vet out an agreement for the town's consideration. And so I was hoping to have a little bit more for you today than I do. However, I can say their estimate of completion was the end of July. They're a little bit over that, but I will stay up with them. So in the very near future, I expect to bring to the town board for consideration a formal agreement that solidifies what our existence is on that property and makes it very clear. I do want to note also that we do have a Hicks Street right-of-way on that property that needs to be resolved. And there was a minor fence encroachment, and that's been resolved. All things considered, though, the David G. Barnes Park does not prevent the downtown park construction from being possible. It is not a linchpin in the bottom half being developed, and that's something that I did want to articulate. I feel very optimistic about the formal agreement, and really that's about where we are at this time. So next steps, complete the formalization of David G. Barnes Park, and obviously there's much that will be done with the Main Street committees and the board in general as far as vetting out how this particular park fits into the bigger picture. Of course, this year we would like to obtain formal adoption, if at all possible, of the conceptual plan. That is helpful for us in pursuing grants. So if we are able to start in the park in the next few years, this particular plan would have to be adopted as this is what we're going for. Also, when we come back as for a formal ask on adoption, what will come with it are also the full picture analysis of what this park means. When we open this park on day one, the park will now have maintenance costs associated with it. The park will also have associated personnel costs. I think Billy Sellers is probably one of the absolute top performers here, but Billy cannot take care of this park by himself. So there are other things to be considered when in the town saying we're going to go for this park. And we'll bring back some of those elements so that the board can make a very informed decision. With that would come in a request for a resolution, and we would also be asking for direction on phase one. Also, we would want to identify access improvements as part of the overall downtown planning, and that would be the sidewalks that I mentioned earlier, and then see if we would still be on track for the development of construction documents as depicted in the 5-year CIP. So that is a summary of next steps. There are other things I'll do internally, but those are generally what we would be looking at. And then that being said, the National Recreation and Park Association is the #1 voice of Parks and Rec for the country. So they do a lot of surveys and a lot of analysis to assist Parks and Rec departments in articulating the value of parks in the overall grand scheme of things. And the nation's local and regional parks do create nearly $140 billion in economic activity per year and support almost 1 million jobs in the United States. So from the Parks and Rec perspective, of course, we're always going to tell you that the park's a good idea, but we definitely appreciate your consideration, and I'll entertain any final questions.
Questions?
My only comment is that it's in the 16th, can you do it any faster? 17, 18 sounds like a long ways away to me.
It does, and I was speaking with the consultant earlier, and one thing that he advised that we may adjust is not necessarily rolling out the entire suite of construction documents for all phases, since we would intend to phase it. He would bite it off in more manageable chunks so that if we do have changes along the way, we don't have to revisit those plans and pay additional money to update them. So just something to consider.
The parking in the bottom right-hand corner, it says event stage parking, temporary parking. It says public works facility be removed. Is that included in the price?
That's all included in the price?
Moving
Oh, the
public
move,
works, and then we're gonna build a new public works department?
that is not.
The value of the new public works facility is not included. That's a public services facility.
Other questions?
Okay. Just, and I don't disagree with anything that Natalie said, that she's done exactly what she's been directed to do. The Parks and Rec Advisory Board has done exactly what they've been directed to do regarding developing plans for this park. I just out of an abundance of caution, I would suggest that this, when the board establishes the Main Street Advisory Board, that this be something that they look at in relationship to everything else. There were some questions asked about what happens to the gravel lot some other event space and that sort of thing. How does all this play together? Is this gonna produce the results that the board is looking for?
Mhm.
And just making sure, because it'd be good to have a discussion once those comments and recommendations come back with the board to make sure everybody's on the same page on what we're trying to get out of this.
And we're happy to assist in that conversation any way you need us to.
I think the thing that strikes me as well is you look at this, you look at 34 acres, you look at the YMCA, you look at the trail system that you're taking on. The context of the full park and rec plan is a story that we don't tell like that. I mean, we break it into individual projects, and to Commissioner Stewart's point before, we need to be pointing out, I think, maybe doing a better job collectively, all of us, the things that we're making progress on, and hopefully this being one of them as well, as we evaluate it. But that's a lot to chew off, and I agree with you, Billy Sellers can't cover all of that. We're going to have an operational budget that matches that kind of growth. So,
Yep, absolutely.
thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. White, explain to us how this is all going to get coordinated.
Yeah, can I set him up? Okay.
Sure, you haven't already?
If you look at our agenda today, all the things that we've gone through, particularly starting with the Main Street Board of Directors, the importance of that. We've talked about this group advising the board on how all these things fit together: events, downtown property, TAP grant, additional connectivity, pedestrian safety, street lighting, downtown park, downtown parking. How do the Millennial Task Force recommendations play into the downtown area? The farmers market, what is relevant with the current downtown vision plan? So there is a lot to consider. When you look at an area, there is as much attention and activity in the downtown area and potential activity as anywhere in Waxhaw when you look at all these things. And that's how important this Main Street Advisory Board is going to be in tying all that together. So.
Exactly, thank you. Here it is. Thank you. So that's exactly it. We need to figure out a way to coordinate all this. It's kind of been implied throughout all the different projects and initiatives we've identified this afternoon, but truly, if we don't consider them all together in a comprehensive and strategic fashion, then we risk missing some big opportunities. Warren just mentioned a lot of the things, and we've discussed all of them this afternoon, but just to say it again and kind of just put it out there as bluntly as possible, there's over $5 million just on the public sector side planned or proposed for downtown in the near term. Natalie talked about the downtown park, the TAP grant, over $1 million of investment, and we as an update, we received the unexecuted agreement for that from NCDOT this past week. Staff is currently reviewing that, going through it, and making sure we're clear and we are in agreement on the scope, staff resource needs, and things like that before we actually execute the agreement. Streetlights, currently we're talking to Duke about how we implement new streetlights downtown, also entertaining the possibility of using someone besides Duke to potentially provide some more customization on the lights. $150,000 is in program for the next 3 years on that. And that's not even counting the private development that we know that you see happening, for example, with the Cotton Flats, and then other things that might be coming down the pipeline as well. So then on kind of the more, right now, less defined initiatives that are being proposed, Millennial Task Force recommendations, some of those specifically related to things that will impact downtown's, the downtown environment. For example, the recommendation to enhance public spaces downtown. Parking study implementation. We have talked about some individual parking solutions that have come to the board in the past couple of months, but those are things that kind of came to us, whether it was the Women's Club request for the lot, whether it was the Clock Shop's request for town's assistance to use that during events. We have yet, and it's one of the strategic initiatives this year, we've yet to actually take the parking study recommendations and decide how we're going to implement them, or which ones we might want to implement, and any kind of effects that's going to have on the downtown. Farmers market location, that's also been floated around this afternoon as well, as something that we are going to be considering as part of with the Main Street Advisory Board. So huge opportunities, and all this taken together, and I didn't even list everything on there. I know we discussed town-owned real estate earlier too. All this taken together really presents an opportunity for transformative change. This is not just a bunch of, or shouldn't be just a bunch of big projects all happening and great. We have a lot of projects happening downtown. We need to look at it as an opportunity to fundamentally revitalize downtown, and doing that will ultimately, it's going to improve the business environment, it's going to contribute to economic development, but it's also going to do things like our sense of place, create a functional interconnected system, and then implement the myriad of ideas that are suggested in our vision plans and different policies that we have. The risk of not considering them all together, of not coordinating, obvious financial implications. If, for example, if we're tearing up the sidewalks for streetlights, and then the next year we come back and want to expand the sidewalks for the TAP grant, that would pose an obvious financial risk. Perception, for credibility with the public, we need to make sure that all this happening at the same time actually makes sense, and that we're not missing any opportunities, and that gets to what I see as kind of the biggest risk involved in the amount of work that's happening downtown, and that's potentially the opportunity cost. Not taking full advantage of the opportunity that this presents for transformative change downtown. You can't really quantify that. So coordination is what needs to happen, and how that happens, the Main Street, I still have board of directors there, but the Main Street Advisory Board should conduct a comprehensive review of everything, of all the downtown projects and initiatives, to include the ones you saw listed there, to include town-owned real estate, and create some sort of a mechanism to ensure that successful coordination among these projects. Now, I know that sounds well, that's not very specific, and that's because we really want to utilize the folks on the Main Street Advisory Board to come up with this. What this could mean is some kind of an implementation tool, whether it's an official downtown map or master plan that's established, whether it's something similar to when you a CIP, but for projects, how you package it all together and make sure that it's all clear what's happening and when. So the Main Street Board of Directors, or Advisory Board, sorry, should take a comprehensive review of all of this, and that's really would be on one of their first items of business, along with the boundary map that we discussed earlier today. So, with that, I'll take any questions.
I think one of the things we have to realize is that perhaps the existing downtown vision plan is dated, and there are things on there that have gone by the wayside.
Certainly.
So it's not just the implementation of that, but it's with a revised boundary. What is a revised master plan, and based upon the goals that we come up with over the next 3-4 weeks.
Certainly, yep.
Do you feel you need to wait till an advisory board is in place before you start putting together a real, actual drawing of what's downtown now? Start
Well,
capturing some of that
for a
data?
drawing in terms like a map. just a I don't think that an advisory board would necessarily add too much more value than we might be able to do with just the current stuff that we know. As far as like just a static picture.
I'm not sure what that means, because we have a static picture of downtown.
I think what's been, just to clarify, I think what you're asking for is some sort of picture of downtown that actually shows TAP grant proposed projects, parking study proposed projects, current town-owned real estate, pedestrian mall proposal, potential sidewalk connections that we've talked about, so that you can kind of see it all on paper at once. Is that, Commissioner Earl, what you're,
An actual drawing,
an actual drawing?
a drawing that's in your CAD system when you get your CAD system, that you can update and keep track of.
Well, that would actually create your new boundary, correct?
Well, that, we wouldn't want to go ahead and create that boundary without the Main Street Advisory Board, but, we could take just a ring around downtown. I think what's being asked, and I've heard several people kind of bring this up before, is that with so much happening in this small area, it would be nice to be able to see it for informational purposes, or would there be, are you asking, what would
For
we
many
do
different
with?
purposes, just a catalog of what you have there. When you're looking at something new, is it going to interfere? If you do something new, is it going to interfere with something that you already have or something you may want to do in the future? And if you don't have it recorded somewhere, actual elevation sizes and so forth, you don't know. It's like a set of drawings, but just a bigger area.
You know what, I think I would like to think about that and kind of get back with you, because what happens when you start doing that is you start making assumptions about the TAP grant and exactly what that looks like, when a lot of that is still going to be vetted out in the design process. You start making assumptions about what parking study implementations are going to happen, so I would want to be careful that we don't.
I'd like for the new advisory board to be in place before that's finalized.
Right.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay, other questions?
Okay, no other questions?
Did your town manager set you up properly?
Yes, he did.
The next steps in establishing the Main Street Advisory Board timetable-wise, just so we can manage our expectations on staff's end.
Everybody's looking at me. Okay, I'll pick a date if you want me to. I mean,
Who's actually going to search for these people?
that's up to us. You got to finalize the skill set. I think, given, you certainly could come up with a list of initial candidates.
Right.
That you've had experience with, not to say that they're going to get appointed or anything like that. I actually think we're going to have to think that one through. In terms of personal opinion, is that, I mean, everybody's looking at me, and it's, if you want to, do you want a slate brought forward to you? Do you want to participate in the selection? How do you want to, this is our board, so we have to say how we want to do it.
That's why I asked the question. I don't think.
But how do you want to do it? It's not let's build consensus here as to how we want to do it. We could, when we put the OAC in place in a couple of weeks, we could have them to go do it. There's lots of different avenues, but given the critical nature of this, how do we want to do this?
So Kurt will develop the skill set matrix.
Right, we got the skill set
The
matrix.
skill set matrix it's ready.
Okay.
Yeah, you saw that earlier, basically. A couple of tweaks.
My opinion is, once you have the skill set together, I would like to be, as a commissioner, part of the selection process, because this is such a big issue. We're talking about downtown, we're talking about millions of dollars. We're talking about an awful lot of things that are going to be done, that need to be done, that have the vision to bring people downtown. And as a downtown resident as well, I think the commissioners for the next 3.5 years need to be a part of that, and possibly it could, maybe the next couple of years, but possibly move it to a different board or a different committee as we move forward when you change the committee members. But initially, I think it's important. I would like to be a part of it. I don't know how the rest of you feel.
I think it's just a question of how that looks, whether it's, I bring a slate of candidates for your consideration, whether that goes through the OAC. I think that's the question.
So let me propose something.
How did Hendersonville do theirs? Because that's what ours is patterned after, is it Hendersonville, North Carolina?
I don't know how they did it, but let me offer up a suggestion. The OAC's done a great job in terms of getting together a good application. So if nothing else, maybe could we have Kurt and Jenny work together, kind of an announcement that would go out and advertise it. And we get applications coming in, and put a window on it for a 2-week period to submit your applications. And does that make sense? I mean, and then we can vet it if that's what we choose. We're making an assumption that we're going to get a lot of people. If we do, we're going to have to develop a vetting criteria, and we haven't done that in a long period of time. So we may need to reach out to the OAC for some help on that. But can we at least get the ball going with that? Is that okay?
so-
Does that make sense to you? Okay. Chairman of the OAC that we're still working through, you wanted to offer a comment.
Mayor, if you could, I think the position you feel so far, done the vetting process, if we could weed everything down, say from 10 candidates, that's the application we get, whatever number we decided on, and then get those to her. There'll be some applications coming for all the skill sets. We can narrow down everything for you instead of having to go through 35 or 25, the top 15 or 20, depending on what get in, give to her, you guys, vetting interviews and things like that.
So assuming we get your rules of procedure in place in a timely enough fashion, what you're suggesting is you'll do an initial vet to make sure that they at least match the skill set. And then when that list of 35 would come to us for vetting. Does that seem workable?
Yep.
Thank you, Don. All right. We're at that time where I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
See you in an hour and 11 minutes.